3 million to 5 million, cybersecurity shortfall within the industry. Skills-based hiring, apprenticeships are ideal. The principle really is to recruit for aptitude and attitude and then train for the specifics.
Welcome to the Enterprise Thought Leadership Podcast, where we explore the latest in enterprise trends, tech, and strategy with the top leaders shaping the future.
Welcome to Enterprise Unlocked. I'm your host, Radhika Mukherjee, Editor-in-Chief of IT Security Wire. Our guest today is Kevin Curran, IEEE Senior Member and Professor of Cybersecurity at Ulster University. Kevin is an independent cybersecurity expert who has made significant contributions to advancing knowledge and understanding of computer networking and systems. Regarded as one of the top cybersecurity experts in the UK, he regularly comments on the latest technological developments and cyber threats. Welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you. So glad you could join us today. And let's set the stage for the audience. As cybersecurity threats evolve at the pace of AI, only 1 in 10 organizations say that they feel prepared for these threats, as per the ISACA. A major underlying issue is the cybersecurity talent gap. Let us start by understanding where we are. Kevin, how would you describe the current state of cybersecurity talent?
I would describe it as a paradox in that we've had layoffs and we've had a hiring freeze, but yet the majority of surveys, especially in the UK, have found that over half the companies are crying out about a shortage within the cybersecurity field. And any other surveys support that most companies are understaffed when it comes to cyber. But really, the conversation has shifted from headcount to skills generally. In other words, that there's a skills shortage in cybersecurity, but generally, it's still a healthy sector to be in within computer science. Again, that we see generally just over 10% uprise, but we're not hitting the peaks that we had pre-pandemic. But generally, again, it's just there's been a bit of a change in the landscape as to what companies are actually seeking, but generally, cybersecurity is still quite a robust area to be in.
Absolutely. And what are the major causes for the talent demand gap in cybersecurity, especially in 2026?
Generally, it comes down to budgets. Again, a lot of the companies can't afford the skills even when the candidates exist. And then we have this experience trap, again, that also the speed. In other words, AI has changed the landscape within cybersecurity. There's two sides to it, of course, the offensive, defensive, but generally AI has come faster than most things we have seen. Again, we've had paradigm shifts before, but they have always been at a scale we could handle. For instance, the cloud was a paradigm shift, but there wasn't the speed to kind of migrate. Again, it just happened as companies had the time and the resources to shift their workloads over generally gradually to the cloud. And then they developed and the pipeline came behind it. But AI has been so quick, again, so that it's a skills shortage as well. And again, there's the experience trap again with prior hands-on experience, needed, but we have a shortage of entry-level roles again, which generally were always there. And that's probably one of the hardest things that we're seeing to navigate is, again, that a lot of companies as well, graduates are being hit because the entry-level jobs are being overtaken by a lot of AI.
Okay. But there's still a gap that exists, right?
Oh, very much again. But again, what we'll have to do, again, coming from the education sector, of course, is to upskill and prepare these candidates for these jobs which are existing, these newer roles within the industry as well. But somehow, again, whether or not it hits further down the line, the fact that a lot of entry jobs are being wiped out at the moment again. So we'll have to see, how do we prepare those candidates in some other way that they can go into, maybe they're moving up the ladder into mid-tier jobs again, but without having entry-level graduates again. There's going to be a gap within the skills within cybersecurity.
Yeah. Where do these jobs actually exist then? At which levels?
Again, mid-tier exists. One thing, which AI can do and is doing quite well, is to automate the repetitive tasks. Again, because we're so aware that there is a burnout problem within the cybersecurity world again, that we have the alert fatigue. Again, and AI can actually offload a lot of that, but it's dealing with the new threats, of course, within the landscape, to do with LLMs. And we also have an expanding attack surface, again, with cloud and operational technology. And then there's a widening cyber inequity as well. So, again, there's just a need really to hire for skills, really. Maybe we have to change some of the traditional ways that companies hired to cope with this kind of new world we're entering.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. So, in this world, are the traditional candidate pool and talent pipelines really capable of bridging this gap at all?
No, not alone. They're insufficient. Um, Even though, if you read any report for the last few years, really, you see the estimates from 3 million to 5 million, cybersecurity shortfall within the industry as well. And that pipeline is narrowing again. So again, enterprises need cross training, again, maybe non-security staff. That has fallen actually. And sometimes the easiest way to hire is from within your pool as well. So some of the lower entries again, and that has been traditionally it. You go in at an entry level in most IT jobs actually, and you work your way up through the ranks. Again, so whether or not we can do that, given that a lot of entry level jobs are replaced by automation, so we have this gap in between. But again, we're looking maybe for non-traditional routes again, and of course, we'll need alternative pathways really to cope with where we are.
Yeah. And what are these alternative pathways that recruiters and enterprises should focus on to hire this kind of talent?
Skills-based hiring again. So again, even if you examine some of the greatest cyber organizations out there, again, including the military, again, a lot of them do the aptitude test, and they kind of hire for skill rather than what the person actually has done already. Because if you have a sharp brain and you have been assessed for certain types of skills that we know exist within IT, which are perfect, again, it's easier to train someone like that but again, we can assess via labs and capture the flags and cyber ranges as well. But of course, my favorite within the industry is apprenticeships, again, which are really wonderful. Again, because the students, there's such a difference in. I've been teaching for almost 30 years now, and I can always see the difference in students in final year in our course, because their third year is based within an IT company. So when they come back in year four, that they've seen how the real world, of course, they're within one particular domain, but their skill levels and their even interest and application is so much higher. So apprenticeships are ideal. In other words, that you can have your theory within college, your guidance again, and hopefully you can specialize, but you're also based in a company and you're getting real world knowledge and skills, because there is a gap in many subjects between the theory and actual in practice. And I'm so aware of that in cybersecurity that, we teach all the way up from cryptography and right up to the application layer again. But when it comes to industry, of course, the student or the graduate is only placed within one particular aspect of that. And of course, generally within industry, you're using commercial products again, proprietary. You're using them from whoever, the Microsofts of this world, the Cisco's, the IBM's, um, Palo Alto, whatever again, and that they can differ so much. But of course, it's wonderful if you can have the knowledge from the ground up again, how the stack works again. So that's one. And if we do have this shortage again, then of course we can take people from other domains again, like law and finance and military, and then try to reskill them as well. But the principle really is to recruit for aptitude and attitude, and then train for the specifics.
Right. That sounds like a very good plan for sure. Then what are the advantages and challenges of non-traditional pathways in this scenario?
Well, the advantages are that you have a larger pool to choose from again, and you can diversity of thought again, and stronger loyalty and retention within that again. So non-traditional routes again, you can get someone who's just fantastically bright, but they just went down a pathway that either the jobs weren't there or that they found it didn't really excite them. And I've seen people do that because I've been involved in what we call conversion masters for many years, where people who have a degree in one subject then come along in 12 months to 18 months learning about aspects of IT. And some of these candidates are fabulous again. But the challenges are that, they might have gaps in the fundamentals. Again, you can only do so much within a short time gap, and there might be a need for structured mentoring again. So you can't have it every way, but again, it's definitely an option for companies if the shortages exist.
Yeah. So the mid-level who is like trained in something else can kind of jump into the mid-level of cybersecurity with some training. Is that the kind of plan?
It's possible to jump into mid, but you would see just below that really,
Okay.
and then you're retraining them, and depends on how much effort they put in really. But of course, yeah, you're generally not gonna get someone from a non-cyber domain really and expect them to go into a senior level. But it depends again. Cyber security has so many areas again, and one of the important areas actually is compliance again, which you can imagine someone from law coming in and wants to understand how, some of the key aspects of cyber again, that they can put their legal mind to into the compliance field as well. And, that's very important. That would be a really good candidate.
Yeah, I can imagine for sure. So, if you had to kind of look at cybersecurity as a career path as well for folks, you did mention, of course, it's a good career path, but for people with what kind of skills, what kind of mindset, as well as what's the long-term kind of outlook for it?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's up to us to close the gap on what's taught within our courses really, and then what's actually used in industry again. But cyber is here to stay. It's actually one of the newest subjects within computer science. You might think AI is, but no. I mean, I was sharing an office beside a professor of AI 30 years ago, and cybersecurity was not a subject within computer science back then. What happened? Well, the internet came along, and then on top of the internet, commerce was built, and then money started to be involved. And then when money becomes involved, of course, and then we had personal information being uploaded, but all of a sudden, an infrastructure developed, built on the internet, and then all of a sudden, of course, where do thieves go? Well, they go after the money, and then we have then all the data which is stored again, and that has to be kept private. But really, it's a commerce machine the internet has become. So cybersecurity became a subject really that we had to teach only recently, as maybe 15 years ago and 10 when we started to go through that again. So it actually is a new field. And before that, the only time you would have heard of cybersecurity might have been on a computer networks course. Someone would have said, explain why we need passwords and what they're for. But, even when you're studying something like databases, you might have just a scant reference for in one of the lectures to to security again, because when I first started using computers in college, there was no passwords on computers again, because generally we carried our information on floppy disks and they stayed with us. And again, you didn't hand over your floppy disk, but once a network became involved and something is connected over a remote connection and is vulnerable to adversaries again, all of a sudden cybersecurity became a real thing again. So we just have to embed cybersecurity into everything from now on again. And it's great that younger people are getting au fait with it from a young age.
Right. So anyone who's in college as well as maybe at the start of their career can certainly go in this direction and know they'll have a good career going forward, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to get any less. It's, right now, if you're starting off, yeah, you would try to, I guess, the easy fruit, the low-hanging fruit really for someone getting into it now is to concentrate on AI. How does AI change the field? How do large language models? What about prompt injections? What will happen if people start connecting all their data using what we call connectors again through their local LLMs again? What will happen there again? So, how have things changed in the field because of AI? Because that will shoot them above someone who's just been traditionally in computer networks and cybersecurity for a while. So, AI is the hottest topic within cybersecurity at the moment.
Right, absolutely. And so, how can education institutions help in bridging this talent gap as well as the subject matter gap?
Yeah, the most important thing is to try to teach to what industry is actually doing. That's why we do try to have industry and advisory boards as well, so that we're not just teaching something which is not practical in the real world at the moment. So definitely the number one thing an educational institution can do is to find out what are the tools being used and what are the gaps and what are the industry looking for. Where do they see the skills gap as such? And then, of course, have micro credentials and conversion courses and degree apprenticeships. And of course, cybersecurity is also one of the domains within computer science where certificates do matter. Companies look for certificates. My advice to anyone, obviously, trying to break into the field, or even as they look for jobs, is to get certified. And there's a lot of free certifications out there from the likes of Google, from Amazon, from you name the company, Anthropic. They provide it because it's in their interest. Now, there are ones you can pay for, but they're generally not that expensive. We're not talking about the ones which a CISO might have, someone been in the industry for a year, but there's an awful lot of entry level ones like Security Plus, and they really give you a guided pathway to learn through the industry as well. And so I would advise anyone younger as well to use their spare time to get certified and to add to the certifications again. And of course, you can choose your pathway. You can choose whether it's cloud, focused again, like I said, Amazon, Google, Microsoft have all these certificates, and most of them are free, or you might be in a programming and secure DevOps, whatever. So concentrate on the one which, and there's also obviously networking. How do you set up networks and whatever else? So or pursue the ones which you have the most interest in within that field.
Totally makes sense. And which aspects of AI are necessary inclusions in university curricula to build cybersecurity talent?
Yeah, I would start with how do AI models work, and what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and then how do the adversaries try to overcome AI again? So adversarial machine learning, prompt injection, data poisoning, and even model theft as well. So, and again, how does AI work as a defensive mechanism again? So, of course, and then the governance as well, that we have the European Union AI Act again, and we have other kind of 4,200. We have other schemes being brought in, which no one would have spoke about a few years ago. Again, so we've always had this ISO 27,000 standard, which companies generally have to adhere to, and it's just a tick box. But it can seem like a tick box and exercise, but it's based on sound principles. But now we're seeing that with AI, that companies will need to adhere to these frameworks, which generally protect our data as well, because you can have the best traditional frameworks in place that you think all your employees have to follow. And again, it just takes someone to download an LLM and put it on their machine and connect it to their servers and their email accounts and whatever else, and they bypass a lot of traditional firewalls, as we say. So again, we have to teach people how to treat AI models again, and even jurisdiction again. So without being xenophobic again, but can you trust an AI from China if you're in the West? And likewise for them. We have seen where some of the big companies again have literally embedded kind of their own prompts again that stop them working if they detect an IP address from a certain country as well. So we have to look at jurisdiction in the future.
That's a whole different discussion, isn't it?
For sure.
When you started your response, what occurred to me is there's almost a mindset that's very special to cybersecurity folks. Like how do you teach that, and how do you recommend folks go about it? The way to think, especially in adversarial situations.
Yeah, it's generally paranoia is not a good thing, but when it comes to cybersecurity, it can be quite helpful again. You've got to, um, just think about all the ways in. And the difficulty of course, with cyber is, the good guys have to make sure there's no breaches anywhere, that they have to be correct 100% of the time. But our adversaries only have to get one particular leak and they can build on that again. And AI has changed things, that it's the scale that people forget how fast the computer processes things. Again, you take this processor I'm on in my laptop right now, it's 4 billion instructions per, the chip again, and this is just a standard laptop. I'm not even using a GPU or something within a Blackwell, something which actually is used within AI models again. And then you take networks, the gigabits that we have, and then once you apply what we call the agent model, which is huge now within AI again, just agents being able to autonomously work. And then we've seen not even proof of concept, we've seen it in the real world where machine learning AI can now chain exploits together and work autonomously with almost no human intervention. And again, when you scale that up, if you know how fast computers work, how much bandwidth is out there, we're dealing with a threat that we've never seen the like of before. Because in the past, we're generally limited by there's only so many bad guys out there. And even if you take national state, there's only so many working for the Russians, for the Chinese, for the Americans, for the British. There's only so many in the offensive. But when you have machines, you've only limited them by your budget, really, by the actual budget, and of course by the skills of your team. But you have a threat just around the corner on a scale that we thought would have been science fiction years ago. So, it's weird times ahead.
Science fiction has come true, but without the flying cars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so how can AI ethics-focused education help in building cybersecurity
Yeah, ethics is operational. We have to make decisions now about what data do we ingest, and we need human oversight. Of course, we have to look into the bias which is inherent in machine learning and AI, and accountability again. So And also now regulation, especially in the EU, which loves regulation. It's a compliance skill. So again, people are employing for that again because companies are fined, of course. Yeah. Um, yeah. And again, so ethics is a key part of cybersecurity in going forward, more so than ever before. And then trust is a commodity security teams trade in. So it's huge. It's not just a soft skill, AI ethics is actually is given the compliance necessity. It's a core skill.
Well, yeah. And like, what are the principles of some of these ethics?
Again, so if you go back even to GDPR as such, so again, if you take all the skills there, you should only collect the data which is necessary. When you collect data, you should make sure it's yeah, that you keep it confidential. You should only collect enough for what's needed again. So you apply a lot to AI again. So in other words, you can't just say, "Oh no, we made a mistake there." You have to figure out were we allowed to have that information? You know, are we allowed to connect something to our database which allows a third party to access through something else? In other words, you have to really do a data audit on what's touching what and who's allowed to have it again, and not just let someone have an LLM within the company and just allow it to train on everything again, and even the training aspect as well, just to be aware of how does have an AI, a local machine model in your company again change, and does it give access to data, and are we protecting the data that we have properly?
Yeah, very, very interesting. You mentioned soft skills. What are the soft skills that are essential to succeeding as a cybersecurity professional?
Yeah, communication above all, really. So um, being able to, especially when if you're mid to higher level again, communicating the business aspects of it again, which obviously a chief information security officer would have. In the past, that generally a CISO was always technical, but now it's not as clear. A lot of them are actually from a business minded rather than technical, but they know how to keep it, have the technical manager report to them. But again, of course, problem solving, collaboration, willingness to learn, and critical thinking again, being able to cope under pressure again, and then I guess as AI absorbs a lot of the routine work again, that having good human judgment and can be a really good trait.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's go to enterprises, right? How can enterprises contribute to talent building in this space?
Yeah, a key thing is to treat talent development as risk mitigation. Again, in other words, again, so protect training budgets again, especially in computer science and AI and cyber. It changes so much again. So, and it's also, for the most part, technical people involved in computing again. That even if many are on the autism scale, but the one trait that we all share is knowledge. Learning again. So again, employees want to always upskill and feel that they're learning. Again, it can be a bigger part than even getting kind of slightly raises. Again, I'm not saying that training supersedes a large bonus, but it's very important to be able to train and and of course then enterprises and then the usual apprenticeships, university partnerships, mentoring, and very important to train again. And it's just a win-win because there's so many move-in goalposts within cyber now. So if you can bring in external or send your employees on external training courses again, it's just a win-win.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And last question. What is some advice you would offer to security leaders and CISOs to build and lead successful security teams in 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, generally we say hire for aptitude and trajectory again. So, because you're never going to get the perfect candidate as such, but I would also say look for candidates now who know how to use AI to augment their skills again. So, and again, they're more likely to automate the repetitive, and then you can redeploy people to judgment work as well. So, I would say, yeah, look for those who know how properly to use AI, because it's no use burying our heads in the sand if you want to be competitive again. But um, and of course, yeah, try to retain staff as well, just like we talked about again, trying to internal promotions as well, because it does take a new staff a lot of time to hit the ground running within a company as well. But again, and importantly, again, just build a culture of continuous learning. Again, never cut back the budget for training within a technical domain like cybersecurity.
Absolutely. And does academia also play a role there in the continuous upskilling and training of employees? Or can academia play a role there?
Very much. Again, of course, hopefully we're in the pipeline before they get there, but we do have short courses, and there are MSCs, and there's part-time MSCs, there's PhDs again, and so definitely universities are, yeah. And of course we have industry collaborations, of course. We have so many kind of schemes where you can collaborate with a university to get a piece of work done. KTP, knowledge technology partnerships, are been around for many years, and there's even funded PhDs where a company can have someone to work for 3 years and they get supervision from someone within the university as well. So of course for a long time universities and industry, we collaborate in a lot of different areas.
Wow, that's very, I think, hopeful, very, very inspiring, and I'm sure it'll give our audience so many ideas about how to actually frame their career paths, and even for industry leaders looking in, how to actually frame their teams well. So thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you for joining us on Enterprise Unlocked.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for the Enterprise Thought Leadership Podcast. Please do follow us on social media and subscribe for more ideas and insights. Until next time.